I had the great honor of interviewing Shannon Borg. She is an artist, a writer, and a certified life coach who helps artists and other creative entrepreneurs master their business and transform their mindset so they can confidently share their gifts with the world and create sustainable businesses. And look, she's doing it. I love this because she's a pro at making websites for artists. And she's going to tell you all about that in this interview. We had such a good conversation. I really think you're going to enjoy this and get a lot out of the depth of conversation and topics we went into. This is her website for artists that she helps and mentors. And she's going to talk a lot about that too, and how she can help you navigate this. If you're an artist that's really looking to build out better business systems, I was drawn to her because I literally typed in art coach and she popped up. Okay. That is really hard to do, to be one of the first people that pop up. So Shannon really knows what she's doing when it comes to helping herself be seen and known for what she specializes in. So she has a podcast called The Metaphor Mindset, and it offers practical ways to walk the creative path, along with new ways of thinking about the artful life. And she offers one-on-one business coaching through her online program, The Metaphor Mindset Studio. And this includes training such as the 4 hats of artists in business, artist media kit masterclass, build your art website on Squarespace, evolve your creative process, and how to create a vision for your art and business. So definitely check her out. I think you're going to love her as much as I did. And I hope you enjoy this podcast with Shannon. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Shannon, so much for being here with me today and all of us watching this. Shannon's amazing, and I'm so impressed by you and how proactive you are in your whole presence online, and how you're you're really playing in all the little playgrounds, all the sandboxes. You're there, and you have a really good understanding of the artist's brain because you yourself are an incredible artist and have gone through this process. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, I'm excited to dive deep in this. Thank you.
wonderful. Well, yeah, there's so much to talk about there, you know,
Yeah.
'cause that's what we're all trying to do is like create this creative life for ourselves. So, and it's been a lot of pain and learning and understanding and failing and throughout this whole thing. And it's a continual process of growth. But yeah, I want to get deep into it too.
Cool. When we were having our meeting, you were talking about working on this painting, and we were talking about naming this whole talk Prison Break. Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You want to talk about that painting and like what that meaning is for you, because that's such a strong meaning for artists. I think we all can relate to it.
Yes, sure. Okay, well, one of my goals for right now, I'm at Southern Illinois University and I'm working on an MFA in painting. And so it's the 3-year program. I didn't start painting until I turned 50. So when that happened, maybe I can tell a little bit of that story is just that my background is I've always loved art. I've always loved visual art and always studied artists and took classes here and there, but really did not feel capable, or I didn't like the marks I made, or, I was very judgmental about myself around visual art. And, but writing came easier. And so as a child and growing up, I was praised for my writing and, I kind of went down that road. And writing and poetry, I have an MFA in poetry, and then I have a PhD in English literature. So too much education, but I just love learning. I always say I got a PhD to get an education, not a job. And part of the reason I kind of didn't go down the academic road is because it just so happened that it was, and I'm getting to the painting, but this is kind of part of it. that
Yeah.
it was the .com boom. So I could get a job working for a website and working for magazines, freelancing. And so that felt more creative to me and was really involved in the Seattle, writing community and all of that for a long time. And but the eventually I moved to the San Juans, and just the visual art part really continued to be knocking on my door. And I love the Anais Nin quote that says something like, and the day came when the pain to stay in the bud was more than the pain to blossom.
Yeah, more painful.
Yes,
Yes, I
exactly.
love that.
I know. So that's how it was for me. I just was like, I don't have that many, years on the planet left or whatever. I mean, I just think that. And so I wanted to study art. So I started on my own, and I lived near an oyster farm, and I was involved in the wine and oyster world. So I always collected shells, and I thought, I'm just going to draw oyster shells because I love them and I love beaches, and it's a place of calm for me, sort of in a lot of chaos in my life personally, um, getting divorced and, jobs and things. And so I drew oyster shells, and I thought, oh, these are going to be so simple. I'll just learn how to do a simple thing. And of course, it's much more complicated than that, because they're these really intricate little creatures. But as I went along down that road, I went to Gage Academy in Seattle for a couple of years and realized I needed more education and more foundation. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. So but I started selling my work and realized that, like, after COVID, that all my friends needed the help that I could give them from the writing and marketing side from my past. But they and me also needed the mindset part. And so the problem for me was that I realized, like, what a mindset mess my brain was. And as I started to work on that and overcome, the imposter syndrome, and just not feeling like I know enough to make paintings, or that I'm good enough or whatever, all of that was really all about learning to release the bars of the prison, of the mental prison. And so this year, there is a, like, coming here to this school, my goal was to experiment. And so I made bigger work, I made larger work, I made smaller work, I made more experimental work, I made work using light, I made work, on paper, on canvas, on flat surfaces, like canvases laid over tables and things. So all of that was really experimental. And this one project I'm working on called 16 Journeys, it's about my 16 great great grandparents and kind of their stories and where they came from, and doing portraits of each one of them. I grew up in Mormon world, so I had some genealogy background and had pictures of them, and stories, which was so fascinating.
Wow.
But the DNA of, like, thinking about this shape of this DNA molecule, and how the lines across of the two parts that kind of come together and thread together were ended up on my canvas, and this huge experimental canvas. And they ended up looking like um, bars on, a jail cell or a prison, right? And I'll tell you this part, we can cut this out or not if, this is appropriate, but I was in jail for 3 days. It felt like,
What?
yeah,
You
it
have to
felt
tell us
like,
the story.
well,
No.
I'm laughing now, right? But at the time it was not funny. But it felt like, Jesus goes into the tomb and rises after 3 days. I have to say that was a big transformational experience. I got a DUI. Yeah, so I was partying and, out at dinner with friends after work, and I was driving home, and I was actually in a turn lane, not doing anything out of the ordinary. I signaled, and I was over the line in the turn lane, and the cop was right behind me, pulled me over, and just so happened that different events happened that it was Martin Luther King weekend. It was 10 o'clock at night on Sunday. Everything was closed the next day. So I had to, it took 3 days for them to like figure out what to do with us that had been arrested. And, you know, I was over the limit. And so that experience, being in this place where with people that, as they say, I never would have met before, you know, it was when orange is the new black was popular. And I was like, oh my God, this is hilarious and dumb of myself, you know. So it gave me a few moments to sit there and think about things. So and then I found that one of my mentors, um, way back in the day, is, you know, a painter. We had this conversation because he's this very spiritual person. He had made a huge transformation in his life, and he had been in prison way back and changed his life, you know. And so we had this conversation about prisons and the mind as a prison, and, you know, the things that we do to ourselves to hold ourselves back. And, you know, it just made sense that this idea of, you know, prison break came into my, I wasn't in prison, I was only in jail for 3 days. So but I have a much more compassion for people who are, you know, really in the system of incarceration.
Yeah.
They're human beings just like anyone else, and people make mistakes, people make bad decisions, people do things under the influence, you know, and make bad choices, you
Mhm.
know, and then things happen, and are in bad situations and all of that. So that's where Prison Break came from. But it's about the idea of the mind, and how our thoughts are what can free us, but our thoughts are also the things that hold us back. So looking at that from a distance, having someone to help you walk through it is, you know, what I do as a coach for artists.
Mm. That is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
That's profound. So, I mean, it really is. I think that um, the the work you're doing is really powerful because you understand it in that way. And so, what do you think are some ways that you see the artists you're coaching like breaking free from that? Like, are there any like tangible things that you could share with us that you're helping them do to break out of this inner mind prison?
Yeah. Well, one thing I do is I use a tool called the self-coaching model, and it's from Brooke Castillo's The Life Coach School, where I'm certified as a life coach. So it's an incredible tool that is super simple. I could teach it to you right now. I could teach it to everybody right now. And then this is one tool I use, but I use others. But then I want to give you an example of someone who has really like changed through this process. Okay, so the model has 5 lines, and it's C, circumstances, T, thoughts, A, no, sorry, F, actions, I should do if I knew sign language better,
Yeah.
A and R. I know R is results. So it's circumstances, thoughts, feelings, actions, and results. So circumstances in the world are the things that happen to us that are beyond our control, you know, words that other people say, things that happen that are just sort of neutral. And most things in the world are neutral until we have a thought about them. Money, for instance. Money is just a piece of paper with a number on it. It's a concept. It's neutral, but we have lots of thoughts about it, right? Good and bad. And that's where the problem comes, because when we have thoughts, our thoughts then trigger emotions in our body. So these emotions are chemical reactions and vibrations and feelings that come up when we're thinking a certain way. And say imposter syndrome. The C is I'm an artist, neutral, right? One person may love that, one more person may think, oh, this is hard, this is terrible, I'm a struggling artist, right? So it's just neutral, it's a circumstance. The thought is, I'm an imposter.
Mhm.
I I'm not, I don't deserve to be here, right? That's the thought that can hold you back, that can be that prison. And when you think the thought, I'm an imposter, the feeling that comes up in, in the body is shame, is fear, is frustration, is like all of these like difficult emotions, uncomfortable feelings. And so when we have those feelings, our feelings drive all our actions. And the action that is driven by that emotion of shame and frustration and not feeling capable or able or deserving of being there is what? We hide. Right? We hide, we make ourselves smaller. When you see a kid, like a kitty or any animal, they do two things, right? It's the fight or flight. And the flight, a lot of times we fly, we hide. Um, and so this idea of the thoughts and then triggering our emotions drive all our actions. We don't do anything unless we for except for three reasons. The motivational triad is seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, and conserving energy.
Mm.
So those emotions really then say, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to conserve energy? Am I going to seek pleasure, or am I going to avoid pain? In this case, we avoid the pain of the emotion. So we hide, we make ourselves smaller, we don't do the things that would put us out there. And our result is then we create an atmosphere in our life where we're not an artist. We're not living the creative life that we have the potential to live. And therefore, we go right back up to the thought line, we are an imposter.
Mm.
So this is the process by which our thoughts create our reality.
So we're kind of like cycling back up into it if we don't break free from it.
Exactly. So, what do we have control over in this process? Once we feel an emotion, our body's off to the races. We don't really have much control over that, like anger or, it's like, oh, I feel it so strongly. It's hard to do anything. I feel depressed. It's really hard to get out of bed or get going. So the idea of not just replacing every bad thought you ever had with a toxic positive thought, but spending more time on the thoughts that are going to serve you. And not just as a concept, but actively. So practicing the thoughts, practice. I'm just looking here on my computer, like for my little ways that I practice my thoughts today. It's just work it into the goal. How do I want to feel? Work it into the goal. My goal is I want to be a creative artist who feels amazing in my process. So you work the feeling and the thought into your goal. So, and someone who has done this, and let's see, I have a few. One person, I have a glass artist, and this glass artist here in Seattle, I could share her name because she's amazing and she's out there on the public.
Yeah,
And
go for it.
her name is Shannon Spruiel, Spruiell, and she's a glass artist, and she has really, she's one of those sort of overachievers. She just works really hard. And to watch her come from, we met when she was like kind of struggling with her website, like I started this website, but I'm not sure, how to do it. And so at first I just helped her with her website. And then she kind of came on with coaching, and she really dug into setting goals, thinking about how she was thinking about things and working through some of these. And at first it was like, okay, help me sell my work. We all go for the how, right? How do I do this? How do I do that? We call that how greed.
Mm.
When how is not the problem. Because when we want to find something out, we will do it. We will figure it out 100%. It's the mindset and the belief in your own work that's the problem,
Oh,
right?
that was going to be one of my questions, and you got to it. I love
I know.
this.
So for her, it was like she was trying to sell her work. And how do I do this online? And I'm like, okay, let's just step back for a minute. What do you really want to do with this?
Yeah.
And she really was thinking, well, I really want to, work with people who have been in trauma and work with and have a message for people and teach this message through my art and do gallery shows and do installations on a bigger scale. So she kind of shifted and started in her website. We started writing some blog posts, and she started writing about her work and how she had worked with hot shop heroes, working glass blowing with vets, and how it was like a PTSD, a way to deal with PTSD. So this idea of I'm an artist who wants to sell my work on a small scale, and how do I do it? That's one thing. But when you kind of up the game and you say, my thoughts are going to be around how do I expand my art practice into a bigger mission, or reach out and help people more and make money, right? Because we don't want to just help without helping ourselves. We
Mhm.
want this to be a balance. So the idea of making our thoughts drive our business on a higher level then creates the emotion of, oh, I'm so excited I'm doing this. And that emotion drives our actions of, I'm going to reach out to this grant, and I'm going to reach out to this organization, and I'm going to, and the result is I'm doing my art on a higher level for a
Yeah.
higher purpose.
And what a more like abundant answer you can get to when you go that deep. And it's not just how do you sell art, right?
Right. Right.
It's so much more complex than that.
And you're doing things
More
like this as well. What?
and then it becomes more simple. Once you kind of like break that down, it's more complex, but then it becomes more simple to implement, I
So
think.
that is so interesting. I just read this morning that I love systems. Systems become simpler at higher levels. It's
Mm,
like the 30-foot view versus the minute view
yeah.
of things, but we need both, right? We need to look closely. We need to look at things and take them apart and like understand how they work. But then we sometimes have to have the big view and go far away, and where everything seems much simpler. Like this is just a big blue marble, right? Floating around in the sky, and we're just all human beings.
Right.
So you're doing some of this as well, like this work with for a purpose and for a mission. How does that feel?
Yeah. When I'm painting for a bigger purpose, like this upcoming fundraiser for the home build in Tanzania for these orphans and families, it takes it to a whole nother level for me, and it breaks those blocks. It's not about me, it's about serving this bigger thing.
Yeah.
So it creates more fuel and passion to create, because it's not just for my own satisfaction, for such a bigger thing. So that's kind of like a little hack I use for myself is um you know using using different um things, experiences, people I meet, and having their input fuel purpose in me to use my talent or passion for painting into another form.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's interesting you said that about the fuel, because just this morning I was going back over in my coaching program. I have like a workbook, that I people can use and go through, and there's worksheets and a lot of fun stuff. Um, and this is one at the beginning of the year. What I do is create like a tarot reading for the whole year. So each one of these
Oh,
is, one of the cards. And here, so you can look at it more closely. And then like my word of the year and my like animal of the year, and just like this little worksheet that I created for my clients and for myself. And because partially I want one of my new mantras is I want to teach people, and for myself, to do business the creative way. Business is a creative process. So this is business, this
yes,
is personal
100%.
development, but this is business. So in April, or the overall kind of quote for the second quarter, the beginning of the second quarter was, "What does the fire want?"
Mm.
And the fire wants fuel, right? And you were talking about fuel. This is what we need. And I love this the I Ching for this, because it's the I Ching is, based on yin and yang and the light and the dark and the transition of the Chinese elements between the elements. It's called the Book of Changes, right? It's about, and the elements are all about what is wood changing into and what is water changing into.
Mm.
Not about the thing itself as much. I mean, yeah, that's important too. But the idea of wood and fire, you know, wood is the fuel for fire.
Yeah.
They need each other. And so when you have, I can't remember what I Ching, level it is, or, what do they call it? Hexagrams. Is that right? Yeah, there's 6 lines. It is, but it's the one about, the idea is fuel. And when you have a fire, if you have all the logs or the pieces of wood scattered all over the place, it can do one of two things. One, it could go out, right? Because the wood is just everywhere. It doesn't have any, way to kind of connect and be fuel. And, or the other thing it could do is burn your forest down.
I love that analogy.
I know, that's a good one, huh? And
That's
so the idea is like, keep your fuel in one place, like tend your fuel, tend your fire, rest when you need to, create a schedule that will help you put boundaries around your creative practice. And I have to tell you, if anybody could take one thing away from today, besides the model, which of course is like amazing, but
yeah.
is my morning journal practice, where I get up, I have coffee, sometimes I have what I call crop rotation. So crop rotation is, I want to do all these things in my life. I want to do yoga. I want to, like, take a walk. I want to do my journal. I want to read. Tarot, like I want to do all these things. Can't do them all every morning. Right. But I do get up. I like being up, when it's quiet, and I do one of them, one or two every day. So I kind of rotate the crops, right?
I like that. That's
Yeah.
great.
And when
Oh.
you leave your field fallow, then it gets more rich, right? So
Mm.
that's why they rotate the crops.
Oh, I
So
like
this idea of the journal and writing in my journal, everything that is in my business, everything you see on my website, every part of my program, every worksheet, every, tool that has come through myself and, my mentors and what I've learned, has come through my journal practice in the morning and like working things out.
Mm.
So it's really helped me to have that time set aside. Sometimes it's just to-do lists. Sometimes it's like, oh my God, I'm feeling terrible. Sometimes it's, wow, I have this really cool idea for a new class and I'm going to work it out here. And, or I'm reading something, and it like creates this metaphor in my mind, like, oh, that's like how we do our art, or that's how we think or whatever. So
I
it's
love that. That's
powerful.
great. That's genius. Thank you. Shannon, we're going a little bit later. Is that okay? Are
It's
you
fine.
open?
I'm
Yeah.
here. I'm here for, I will chat for
Okay.
as you.
Okay, cool. I want to respect your time, but
Oh yeah,
um,
no,
you're good. I want to ask you this, kind of like going back to one of the first topics we were talking about, your your system and blocks. And what would you do? Have you seen artists maybe that you're working with, or maybe yourself, where they're working and then they feel like you get so frustrated that you just feel like I'm out. This is not for me. I quit. I don't even know what I'm doing. This feels so frustrating. I don't want to do this again. What do you do then?
yeah. I think everybody comes to that place at some time or another. And I have to say, I love circles and diagrams, because I would say remind yourself that life is cycles. You know, we life is 50-50. There's good, there's bad, there's yin, there's yang, there's high times, there's low times, there's high energy, there's low energy. And just again, to have that kind of far view of things. And that's why I love Zen Buddhism. It's really interesting. And I forgot to tell you the part about after the DUI, I quit drinking. So that was 7 years ago.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah, I
right.
forgot that part. But it, like, really, I kind of entered the recovery community in certain ways, and it was really interesting to learn what they think and what these wise people who have been doing this for a while, have to say. And it really is, I think, helpful to get perspective by talking to other people, by finding community where you have others to talk to, because usually those moments of frustration come with ourselves. And then we express it to other people. And sometimes it's fun to just bitch about things, right? And just whine and bitch and all of that. But after a while, I think we all realize that we don't want to be around somebody who's like that all the time, right? It's a downer.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's hard. It's a downer, and you feel people's pain and you feel your own pain. But at some point, it's like, okay, here I am in this ditch. What are my options? Really, bad shit happens to people, to good people.
Mhm.
People are in, a lot of pain, a lot of, illness and death and all sorts of things. And I love this quote from, I think it's Amy Walker. Amy Walker. I'm going to look this up really
Mhm.
fast. Um, um, the idea of the only way to the best way to get rid of power or to give up power is to give it to somebody else. You know, I'm sorry, you probably want to cut this out,
Oh, it's fine. It's fine.
but the idea of like the best way to lose your power is to give it up to somebody else or to give it up. And we don't have any, I don't know, we don't in that situation, the model of the thought and the feeling and the action, sometimes you just have to feel the feelings.
Mhm.
And really, the more that we can feel those uncomfortable feelings, understand them, let them flow through us, really feel them in your body, not push them away. Understand what's behind them. What are the thoughts that are behind them? And this isn't maybe an example of like the artist struggle. I have this concept called the struggle button, and it's the model. So I'm an artist. The thought is, I struggle, right?
Yeah.
And in a sense, it's like when I struggle, when I feel like I'm struggling, then that emotion of like things are hard, life is hard, this is difficult, I'm never going to make it, I'm done, I'm frustrated. Then the action that is driven by that is, giving up or just doing the same thing over and over, and the result is I struggle. It's like, I must be an artist, I struggle. So we get really hooked to that. We really love that, like, oh, I want to keep pushing that struggle button because it makes me feel like an artist, you
Mm.
know? The struggling artist, it's a trope, it's a
Yeah.
metaphor that like we're all so used to. It's just in our heads so strongly. So what if it were easy? What if it were easy in the depths of hardness and the ditch of death or pain and illness? What if it were easy to just like let go for a minute,
Yeah.
you know once in a while, just like let go.
Amen. That's so good.
And then the cycle comes again, right? And get your thoughts together, take self-care, and it's this process that comes and goes. But I think for me, it's been, of course, still happening and will till till I die. And you too, but this just like, okay, what's next? My cycle and my process really helps me to get centered and say, okay, what hard emotion am I going to have to feel when I set this next goal for myself?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be scary, it's going to be difficult, I'm going to have to learn new things. I'm going through that right now, just like everybody else is.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I like that you said it feels like you're sort of in a ditch. And I see that as I have like I call it like the creative entrepreneurial growth system. And it's a
Yeah,
spiral to me, but it also, if you were to see it from that other viewpoint, it looks sort of like a mountain range. And the slope going up is like climbing up the mountain. It's difficult. And then you have to slump back down once you hit a tip and you learn something.
yes,
Then another one. And then you have to go through that slump to get to the next one and create momentum to keep learning and get out of that to the next one.
totally.
Sounds
That,
similar.
I love that image, and it's like a roller coaster. It's kind of,
Yes.
and it can be terrifying and fun.
Yeah, that's true. Really
Yeah,
true.
yeah, no, that's really good.
Hmm, cool. Okay, another fun one. You ready?
Yes.
What has been the most successful way for you to sell your art?
Okay, I have to say, creating my own one-person shows.
Awesome. And where do you do them?
Well, I've done them in a couple of different places. In the small town where I lived, I don't live there right now because I'm in Illinois, but on the island, San Juan Island, up in north of Seattle in San Juan's. And there's a great artist community, but there's also a lot of people coming in from other places. It's kind of a touristy community. And so I kind of rented a space and I set a goal for myself. I said at the beginning of the year, I'm going to do a one-person show, on this weekend, chose a good weekend, which I thought would be a lot of people around. And then I have a little spreadsheet and a list of like all the things to do for the show. And I started to create work and um, around a theme. And so it pushed all my buttons.
Mhm.
It's like, I can make the show itself and all of that stuff a creative process. I wanted to incorporate light and paper sculptures, paintings, and it was kind of about the elements. So I had different walls that were different elements in different colors. And so it was a very kind of all encompassing, more installation type show, because I want people to be entertained and inspired by my work. So I created, you know, when you go to a museum and they have words and the explanations and they kind of tie everything together, that's what I wanted it to be like.
Mhm.
So when doing that, it's like, oh, this is so fun, a creative experience, a lot of work, but also I just did it as much as I could. I didn't put a lot of pressure on me. I'm like, this is going to be fun. And then it was a 2-day, I think there was a reception. I did a reception on like a Friday night when I knew people would be around. Then I had the show up for a week, but then really kind of focused on it for that weekend. And in that time, it was just there and talking to people about my work. So that's the fun part, creating a creative in-person experience, talking to people in person. And then it allowed me also to envision my work in a different way, like in a more holistic way with that like big picture. And then of course at that point gather people's information and they're on a list and continuing to experience, build that relationship. And so let's see. Oh, one thing that was fun. I created this little room, which was kind of what I love. What are they called? Wonder cabinets or cabinet of curiosity.
Yeah.
In Germany, and during the age of exploration, when they were bringing back all and stealing all these things from all over the world, right? And that's like the base of how museums were created, and natural history museums. Um, so I created this one little area of all seaside stuff, like dried seaweed and shells and wood and rocks, and in kind of like little glass cases and things. So it wasn't anything I was going to sell. I put some drawings around in that area, but mostly, paintings were in the larger area. And so I created this kind of experience, and it was so much fun that during those 2 days, I sold like 20 paintings, you know? And
Um,
I think it was like, for me, it's kind of interesting because we all look at online as being the way to that some people make a lot of money online, and some people do that really well. And I have sold pieces online. Um, and it's great because people see your work that would never have seen it before, and you have this community. And so it's all good. But I have to say, my favorite way is creating my own shows.
that's
Not waiting for a gallery, not waiting for, you know, somebody else to come in and say, wave a magic wand and say, you're an artist now. Right.
yeah. That can be a long wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Taking the power back. That has been one of my favorite ways too.
Good. Cool.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Tell me about that. What have you done that has
Well,
been
I think
fun?
that the like the fundraiser I'm doing now, or I did it in the past supporting Mission Blue, the ocean conservation organization, and
Yeah.
rent a space and then just throw your own art party. And that's been, it made me feel like after that show, after I completed that body of work and presented it, did the whole thing, I felt like I could die happy. You know,
Ah,
so fulfilled. I didn't wait for the gallery. I didn't even, I just really like let that go. Let that dream go. Like, we're not going to try to get in galleries. We're not going to do this song and dance for them. I'm not going to do that for museums. And I'm just going to do this my own route, make my own box,
yeah.
not try to fit in other people's boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that with the like creating my own tattoo studio too. Like I'm not gonna try to get into someone else's shop and like mold to them, but create our own space and carve something else out of this industry and make something unique that
Mm-hmm.
is fresh and new and more supportive to the artist, to the community, to um, inspire others, I think, in more ways.
That is just so true. I love the William Blake quote. It says, I must create a system or be enslaved by another man's. I will not reason and compare. My business is to create.
Yeah, I love that.
Right. And yeah, that's what you did. And that's what you're doing with your business model. Now, it doesn't mean that in the future, galleries might come and say, Justine, we want to represent you. Or when you approach them, you'll have all this experience under your belt, doing all these different things, and they'll see you here and there. And it builds authority.
But isn't that the funny thing that when the gallery wants to work with you, it's because you've already grown so much and you've built your own audience and you don't even need them anymore. So why would you go and do it with them when you can do it yourself and
Yeah.
have the system and the
Yeah.
formula?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the answer to that might be like, well, it depends on what kind of gallery, depends on who it is, depends on what the relationship would be. If you want to explore that, that's great. But it does open doors. It
That's
gives you more opportunities. And I love, this is interesting because I have a sales coach. One of my great podcast that I love, and it's about life coaching. It's called Make Money as a Life Coach by Stacey Bayman. But her way of thinking about sales in general, she used to sell mops in Walmart.
Huh.
And she now sells millions of dollars worth of life coaching and helps so many people and is really generous and really interesting and really quirky and really nutty and has gone through a lot of ups and downs in her career and like failing and learning and all that. Anyway, but she talks about creating demand, in with this thought work and thinking, people want my work. They're just waiting. Those people, the specific people that I'm making my work for, are out there and they're waiting. So let's get going, let's find them.
Yeah. And be
And that,
findable.
right, exactly. And that gives you motivation, the fuel, exactly, to feel like I'm not going to just stay in my own, in my little studio. I'm going to try some different things and see what works for me and gives me that energy. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you found
Cool.
that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah. Really.
Cool. So another component of your work is building websites. And
Mhm.
you have a really generous gift for our viewers. Thank you for this. Do you want to talk about
Yeah, sure.
in
Well,
our websites?
yeah, so I build websites on Squarespace only for artists. And I came to this honestly, okay, because way back in the day, I had a website, I had like a WordPress website and learned how to use it a little bit to be enough to be dangerous. And then I worked for some other websites just like on the content, and they had developers. It was like a big company. And so I learned a little bit about the whole process. But then after Gage, I took a class on how to build websites on Squarespace. And at first, it was so frustrating, Justine.
Mhm.
Just like when you learn something, I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. It's like, I just want to give up.
Yeah.
This is really frustrating. But I knew that I wanted to do it for myself. I wanted to learn how to do it because I did not want to be calling somebody every 5 minutes going, can you please change this image? Da, da, da. So I lived through the pain of learning how to do it. And really now I look back on it, it's like, oh, that pain was like 3 days of really digging into the thing that was hard, getting past it, doing it again over, and now I love Squarespace. I love websites. And so,
Wow.
yeah. And so, I think that hopefully that inspires other people. It's just like, yes, it'll be hard, but you'll learn it and then you'll love it.
Mhm.
Just like anything, just like painting, So, anyway, so I build websites. I have two offers. One is my coaching program, the Metaphor Mindset Studio, which is 6 sessions of one-on-one coaching, plus my program of trainings and some of the things that I've talked about. So I have that, and then I have that plus a website. So those are my two offers. So I will, but you can't just do the website. This is my Trojan horse. I feel like people always need the mindset stuff. So if you want to work with me, it's going to involve coaching too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And we'll build your website together. And, I'm not going to just do it for you and hand it to you. I'm going to, every session we have, I turn on, we can record it. I show you what I'm doing, what I just did on the back end, so you can get used to it and learn it. And then I have this class in my program called Build Your Art Website. So it's all the modules of how to actually do it on Squarespace. So there's that. And so the idea is that I like the one-on-one consultations and sessions because, I get to ask questions and everyone's issues are different depending on what you want to do with your site or your business. There's a lot of, I think, insight that comes from working one-on-one. So it's a benefit to me to sit with someone for an hour. I learn a lot. I learn how to coach better. I learn what people need. So when you say it's generous, it works both ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm really willing to, you can book a 50-minute session. That's a free consultation. We could look at your website, we can talk about your business, we can, then I would tell you what I do and what I offer and, all of that. But it's definitely, it will be hands-on into whatever issue is you're going through right now, website or not, business or art or creative process.
And she said 50.
50, 50 minutes. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, awesome. That's really, really cool because you have a really great website and you've got all the things you need in a website. I checked. I made
Thanks.
um
Well, one thing I have to say is really funny because everyone says you should write this like very, very professional about page with, just your picture and, looking all professional, and then like a short thing about how you can help other people. I didn't do that. I want to make, I mean, you can make your business however you want, you know? And I wanted to make a long about page that told everything about me that people could go and read and, get a sense of how I think.
yeah.
So you can do what you want on your site and have it be creative the way you want it to be.
Yeah, it's like someone coming over and you having a deep experience with them.
Yeah. And we still do SEO and we still do, all the tech things that like get you out there and get people to see you and all of that. But there's so much latitude in, your own creativity.
That's right. That's how I found you. So that's why I also know you really know what you're doing and you really know what you're talking about here because I literally decided one day I'm going to type in art coach because I wanted to interview art coaches.
Yeah.
And you were one of the first people that popped
Right?
up. Yeah,
That's so cool.
I
Yeah.
didn't search for very long. I didn't go through it. And I was like, she's got something here. I would love to talk with her.
Well, thanks.
So
That's good. Yeah, and that's
findable and
you know,
see.
blogging and learning a few things about behind the scenes. And I think of keywords and SEO as like poetry.
Hmm.
You know how like poems can have like a couple of words that are really, really, like haiku,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, it's like, what are these little words that kind of essentially explain what you're trying to do? That people are going to type into that box because they want something and they need something. And so I love that as being a little more of a creative emotional process than just like tech,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
so
cool.
glad that you found me that way. That's fun.
Isn't that cool? It works. Amazing. Well, thank you, Shannon, so much for your time and going over and speaking with me for so long today. I really appreciate it. I learned so much, and I know that you're going to follow our viewers so much too.
Oh, well, you're so generous with your time, and I've learned from you as well, just watching you, with your mission and your work and how you're tying it into what you feel is important to do in your life and in the world. So it's very inspirational. I'm just honored to be a part of it.
Thank you so much.